The internet did what it always does. A 15-second clip surfaced, and suddenly everyone decided they had the entire Cleveland Browns quarterback situation figured out. Some fans swore it was confirmation, others called it meaningless. And just like that, a quick interaction between Todd Monken and Shedeur Sanders turned into a full-blown debate about QB1, favoritism, and the future of the franchise. But here's the uncomfortable truth most people are missing. That clip doesn't mean everything, and at the same time, it doesn't mean nothing. The biggest mistake fans make is treating moments like that as conclusions instead of clues. You can't take a few seconds of body language and declare a starter for next season. That's reckless, but pretending it's irrelevant, that's just as lazy. In the NFL, especially with quarterbacks, nothing is accidental. Interactions matter, context matters, and most importantly, actions that follow matter far more than what happens on camera. The real story isn't what Monken said or how long the clip lasted. The real story is what happened immediately after. Because while people were arguing online, Monken was making moves. Quiet ones, decisive ones, the kind that don't trend on social media but completely reshape an organization. This wasn't about optics. It wasn't about pandering to fans or sending a message through the media. It was about control, about tearing down what wasn't working and rebuilding with purpose. And when you look at what Monken actually did behind the scenes, the narrative shifts fast. Suddenly, the clip feels less like an overreaction and more like the first breadcrumb. Because when a head coach walks into a building and starts firing assistants, overhauling systems, and importing a philosophy that clearly aligns with one quarterback's strengths, that's not coincidence, that's direction. So before jumping to conclusions, it's worth slowing down and asking the right question. Not does this mean Shedeur is the starter, but why is Monken moving the way he is? And once you start answering that, the picture gets a lot clearer. Nobody saw this coming, not the media, not the fanbase, and definitely not the coaches who just lost their jobs. Todd Monken didn't walk into Cleveland and tweak a few things. He walked in and blew the whole thing up. 2 coaches gone immediately, no grace period, no let's see how this plays out. Just a hard reset that sent one clear message: last season's offense was unacceptable and it was not getting another chance. This wasn't random either. Monken didn't fire assistants to make noise. He fired them because the infrastructure around the quarterback was broken. The offensive line coach? Gone. The passing game coordinator? Gone. And when you look at what the Browns' offense looked like week after week, that decision suddenly makes a lot more sense. The line wasn't just struggling, it was collapsing. Missed assignments, free rushers, pockets dying almost instantly. That kind of environment doesn't just stall drives, it ruins quarterbacks. Timing disappears, confidence fades, bad habits form, and for a young QB like Shedeur Sanders, that's how careers get derailed before they ever start. Monken saw that and didn't hesitate. He didn't blame injuries, he didn't hide behind analytics, he didn't sell patience, he cut the problem out at the root. And then there was the passing game. Predictable routes, condensed spacing, no vertical stress, no sequencing to force defenses into conflict. Everything felt safe, comfortable, easy to defend. That type of system doesn't empower a quarterback, it cages him, especially one whose biggest strength is processing speed and anticipation. So Monken didn't try to adjust it, he scrapped it entirely. That's the part people missed. This wasn't about personality clashes or optics. This was about fit. Monken knew that if Cleveland was serious about developing Shedeur Sanders, the offense had to be rebuilt around what he does best, not what failed before. And here's the key detail that matters most. Coaches don't make moves this aggressive unless they're protecting someone. This purge wasn't about cleaning house for the sake of control. It was about clearing the runway. Monken wasn't hedging, he wasn't experimenting, he was committing. But the most revealing part wasn't who got fired. It was who Monken brought in next. Here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. The old Browns offense wasn't just ineffective, it was actively dangerous for a young quarterback like Shedeur Sanders. Bad offenses don't always look chaotic on the surface. Sometimes they look organized, structured, even safe. But underneath, they quietly sabotage development, and that's exactly what was happening in Cleveland. Start with protection. The offensive line wasn't just losing reps, it was losing them fast. Pockets collapsed before routes had time to develop. Free rushers showed up untouched. Communication broke down against basic stunts. That forces a quarterback into survival mode. And once a QB starts playing to survive instead of playing to read, everything changes. Timing disappears, footwork speeds up, eyes drop early. You stop trusting the concept and start trusting instincts. That's fine for a veteran who's seen everything. For a young quarterback, it's how bad habits get locked in. And it didn't stop there. The passing concepts themselves were suffocating. Routes were compressed. Spacing was tight. Defenses didn't have to defend the entire field, just a small window in front of them. There was very little vertical stress, almost no layered sequencing, and nothing that forced defenders to hesitate. That's a nightmare for someone like Shedeur. His biggest advantage isn't arm strength or scrambling, it's processing. He reads leverage quickly. He anticipates windows before they open. He understands coverage shells and attacks them decisively. But that only works when the system gives him answers. The old scheme didn't. Instead of creating conflict for defenses, it simplified their job. Linebackers could sit. Safeties didn't have to rotate late. Corners could drive on routes without fear of being punished over the top. That turns a quarterback into a check-down operator, even if he's capable of much more. And here's the most important part. None of this was theoretical. We've seen this story before. Talented quarterbacks stall not because they can't play, but because the environment never lets them grow. They're asked to manage instead of command, to avoid mistakes instead of create pressure. Todd Monken recognized that immediately. That's why this wasn't about patience, it was about prevention. Leaving that system in place would have forced Shedeur to spend another year unlearning bad tendencies instead of building confidence. So when Monken hit reset, it wasn't dramatic. It was necessary. And the replacement he chose tells you exactly what kind of quarterback he believes Shedeur can become. This is where things get uncomfortable because the biggest issue wasn't just protection, it was philosophy. The old passing game in Cleveland was built for safety, not growth. It prioritized avoiding mistakes over creating advantages, and for a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, that's a silent ceiling. On paper, the scheme looked reasonable. Short concepts, conservative reads, quick throws. Coaches love calling that quarterback friendly, but in reality, it strips decision makers of what makes them dangerous. Shedeur doesn't need to be protected from reads, he needs to be challenged by them. The passing concepts were static, routes broke at similar depths. Motion was predictable or non-existent. Defenses didn't have to communicate late or adjust post-snap. Everything happened on schedule, and that's exactly why it was easy to defend. When nothing forces hesitation, defenders play fast. And when defenders play fast, quarterbacks play small. That's what nobody wanted to admit. Shedeur's strength has always been how quickly he processes leverage. He understands where defenders are supposed to be and, more importantly, where they aren't. But the old system rarely gave him layered reads or vertical conflict. There were no built-in answers when coverage rotated late. No stress on safeties, no punishment for cheating downhill. So what happens? You get checkdowns that look like smart decisions, but are really just the only decisions available. You get short completions without rhythm. You get drives that stall because defenses know exactly what's coming next. And that's deadly for development. Quarterbacks don't grow by being shielded from complexity, they grow by being trusted with it. When the system limits reads, it limits confidence. When confidence stalls, leadership stalls with it. The worst part is this: systems like that don't fail loudly, they fail quietly. Fans argue about stats, media debates patience. Meanwhile, the quarterback is stuck operating with one hand tied behind his back. Todd Monken saw the mismatch immediately. Instead of trying to fix Shedeur, he removed the offense that didn't fit him. That tells you everything. Monken isn't looking for a caretaker quarterback. He's looking for someone who can run the entire operation. And that's why the passing game coordinator change matters so much. This isn't about new plays, it's about new expectations, about attacking space instead of hiding from it, about forcing defenses to make wrong choices, not hoping they make mistakes. Because when Shedeur is allowed to think fast, throw with anticipation, and stress all three levels of the field, the conversation changes fast. And the coach Monken brought in knows exactly how to unlock that. Which leads directly to the most important hire of the entire offseason. This is where the picture finally comes into focus. Todd Monken didn't just fire coaches and hope things improved. He imported a blueprint, one that already worked at the highest level. The hires didn't come from random places, they came straight from Baltimore, and that matters more than people realize. In Baltimore, Monken helped build an offense that didn't babysit the quarterback. It empowered him. That system stressed defenses horizontally and vertically at the same time. Heavy play action, tight ends as real weapons, not decoys. Route combinations layered to force defenders into impossible decisions. If you guessed wrong, you paid for it immediately. That's the environment where Lamar Jackson took his biggest leap as a passer. And it's not a coincidence that Monken wants that same structure in Cleveland. This offense isn't built on "don't mess it up," it's built on controlled aggression. The run game pulls linebackers forward, play action freezes safeties, tight ends attack seams, receivers stretch coverage vertically. Suddenly, defenses can't just sit and react, they have to choose, and when they choose wrong, the quarterback is trained to punish it. That style fits Shedeur Sanders perfectly. Shedeur thrives when the field is spaced correctly, when reads are layered, when the system gives him answers instead of forcing him to improvise every snap. His anticipation, timing, and understanding of leverage all shine when defenses are stressed before the ball is even snapped. That's why this isn't just a scheme change, it's an ecosystem change. Monken didn't just bring in concepts, he brought in teachers who already speak the language, coaches who know how to install it, coaches who understand how to adjust it when defenses counter. That continuity is everything for a young quarterback. Here, what people miss. Most quarterback failures happen because systems keep changing. New terminology, new reads, new expectations every year. Development turns into survival. Confidence resets constantly. This Raven-style approach avoids that. It's modular, adaptable, built to evolve without tearing everything down. And that's intentional. Monken isn't just thinking about next season, he's building a foundation that can last, even if coordinators change, even if personnel shifts, the core philosophy stays intact. Aggressive but structured, creative but disciplined, demanding but clear. That's not experimentation, that's commitment. And when a head coach commits this hard to a system and aligns it this closely with one quarterback's strengths, it tells you exactly where this is headed. Because Cleveland didn't just import a playbook. They imported a vision. And now the only question left is whether the organization will finally stay out of the way long enough to let it work. Even with all these aggressive moves, not everyone in Cleveland is ready to celebrate yet. And honestly, that hesitation didn't come out of nowhere. Browns fans have been burned too many times to blindly trust another new era. They've heard promises before. They've watched plans fall apart before. So when Todd Monken arrived after weeks of silence, leaks, and mixed messaging, the doubt was inevitable. Reports suggest the hearing process itself was messy. There were rumors of internal disagreements, different visions pulling in opposite directions, and a front office that didn't seem fully aligned at first. Some fans felt like Monken wasn't the clear first choice but the compromise option. And in a franchise with a long history of settling for half measures, that perception matters. It immediately triggered old memories of past missteps, rushed decisions, and coaching hires that never truly felt unified. But here where the story starts to shift. Once Monken actually walked into the building, the tone changed fast. There was no easing into power, no waiting period, no "let's see how this plays out." He started cutting immediately. Coaches were fired without hesitation. Replacements were locked in quickly. His offensive philosophy was installed right away. That's not how a placeholder behaves. That's not how someone acts when they're unsure of their authority. And that's the disconnect fans are still wrestling with. The process looked shaky, but the execution hasn't been. Monken isn't acting like a coach who backed into the job. He's acting like someone who was promised control and intends to use it. This is why the nervousness is fair, but also incomplete. Fans aren't doubting Monken's football mind. They're doubting the organization's ability to stay out of its own way. That skepticism is earned. Years of chaos, resets, and conflicting visions don't disappear overnight. Trust has to be rebuilt through actions, not press conferences. And so far, Monken's actions have been decisive. He didn't protect underperforming assistants. He didn't cling to broken systems. He didn't compromise on what the offense needs to look like. He identified what was holding the quarterback back and removed it immediately. That doesn't guarantee success, Nothing in the NFL does, but it does signal something Cleveland fans haven't seen often: clarity. And for a young quarterback like Shedeur, clarity matters more than optimism, because quarterbacks don't care about how messy the hearing process was. They care about protection. They care about structure. They care about whether the people designing the offense actually believe in what they're building. Right now, for the first time in a long time, it looks like someone does. Here, where the conversation shifts, because once you step back and look at the sequence of moves, the picture starts to feel very intentional. Not loud, not announced, but deliberate. Todd Monken didn't just walk into Cleveland and tweak a few responsibilities. Reports suggest he walked in with leverage and he's been using it immediately. This didn't look like a head coach easing into the building. It looked like someone who already knew where the problems were and didn't hesitate to cut them loose. Offensive line coach gone, passing game coordinator gone, and not after months of evaluation, almost instantly. That matters. Coaches without authority don't move like that. Coaches who are still earning trust don't get to reshape staffs on day one. And that's where the speculation starts. Because when a coach moves this fast, the assumption is simple. He knows exactly who he's building for. And everything Monken has done lines up cleanly with one quarterback profile: quick processor, confident decision maker, comfortable attacking all three levels, unfazed by pressure. Reports claim that internally this offense is being designed to reward anticipation and decisiveness, not hesitation. That's not an accident. Now, none of this officially names a starter. There's been no announcement, no depth chart, no quote saying this is our guy. But NFL teams rarely make declarations like that anyway. They send signals through structure, through staff, through philosophy. And that's the quiet part most people are missing. Monken isn't installing a system built to protect a quarterback from himself. He's installing one that demands the quarterback take control: heavy play action, layered route concepts, tight ends involved in progression reads, defensive manipulation before the snap. These aren't training wheels, these are trust concepts. It's been said that some within the organization wanted a slower transition, more balance, more caution. But Monken didn't compromise. Instead, he brought in coaches who already speak his language, who have taught this offense before, and who understand how to empower a quarterback rather than manage one. That suggests confidence, and confidence usually comes from clarity. Again, this is speculation, but it's informed speculation. Teams don't rebuild offensive infrastructure this aggressively unless they're confident in who's under center. And they don't clear out conservative voices unless they're ready to let the quarterback drive. Which leads to the real question. If this were still an open competition in the traditional sense, would the Browns be moving like this? Or does this look more like an organization quietly aligning itself around a quarterback they believe is ready to take control? The answer isn't written on paper yet, but the blueprint is getting harder to ignore. Here's the part most people are missing. This offense isn't being built for a quarterback. It's being built for Shedeur specifically, and once you see it, everything Todd Monken is doing suddenly clicks into place. Shedeur's biggest advantage has never been raw arm strength or highlight throws. It's how fast his brain works. He processes coverages quickly, understands leverage before the snap, and knows exactly where the ball needs to go before defenders even react. That skill gets wasted in conservative, static systems, and that's exactly why Monken tore the old one down. This new structure is built around anticipation, not hesitation. The spacing concepts create clear answers. The route combinations force defenders to declare early. That's where Shedeur thrives. When defenses are forced to choose, he punishes them instantly. He doesn't need chaos to improvise. He needs structure that lets him stay one step ahead. Another key piece is timing. This system is rhythm-based, not scramble-dependent. That matters. Shedeur has always been at his best when he can hit the top of his drop and fire with confidence. Play action, layered concepts, and tight end seams all work together to slow linebackers just enough to open windows. Those fractions of a second are everything at the NFL level. And unlike previous schemes, this one doesn't ask the quarterback to play hero ball every snap. It spreads responsibility across the offense. Motion creates mismatches. Personnel groupings dictate coverage. The run game forces respect. That means Shedeur isn't being asked to carry the entire operation on his shoulders. He's being asked to direct it. This also protects him mentally. Young quarterbacks fail when they're overwhelmed or second-guessing themselves. This system gives clarity. It tells the quarterback, if they show this look, here's your answer. That confidence compounds fast. You stop reacting, you start dictating. Most importantly, this offense grows with him. It's flexible. It adapts week to week. That allows Shedeur to expand his game instead of relearning everything every season. That kind of continuity is rare, and it's exactly how real franchise quarterbacks are built. This isn't about hiding flaws, it's about amplifying strengths. And when a system is designed to match how a quarterback thinks, not just how he throws, that's when things get dangerous. From the outside, it was easy to label everything that happened in Cleveland as messy. The long hearing process, the leaks, the uncertainty, the sudden firings, to casual observers. It looked like another chapter in Brown's dysfunction, but once you zoom out, a very different picture starts to emerge. This wasn't chaos, it was a runway being cleared. Todd Monken didn't walk into Cleveland looking to manage personalities or preserve old structures. He walked in with a plan and started removing anything that slowed it down. Coaches who couldn't execute were gone. Philosophies that didn't fit were scrapped. Systems that asked the quarterback to survive instead of command were erased. That's not panic, that's intent. What matters most is who benefits from that intent, and every single move points in one direction. This new offense isn't designed to babysit a quarterback. It's designed to empower one. It values processing over improvisation, timing over panic, control over chaos. That doesn't work unless the quarterback is capable of handling it, and the organization is clearly betting that Shedeur Sanders is. That doesn't mean guarantees, it doesn't mean instant superstardom, and it definitely doesn't mean there won't be adversity, but it does mean something far more important: alignment. Coaching, scheme, protection, and philosophy are finally pulling in the same direction. And alignment is what young quarterbacks rarely get. For years, Cleveland cycled through half solutions, patchwork offenses, mixed messages, coaches coaching for their own survival instead of the quarterback's growth. That era appears to be over. This regime is making decisions that suggest they're willing to live with the consequences, good or bad, of committing fully. That's the difference between hoping something works and building something on purpose. If this fails, it won't be because the Browns didn't try, it won't be because the quarterback wasn't given structure, it won't be because the system didn't fit, it will come down to execution, and that's a gamble worth taking. Because when a quarterback has clarity, protection, and trust, talent finally has room to breathe. 6 months from now, this conversation is going to sound very different. Either this becomes the moment people point to and say, "That's when it changed," or it becomes another lesson in how unforgiving the league can be. But one thing is already clear. This wasn't random, this wasn't reactionary, and it definitely wasn't chaos. It was a runway, and the takeoff is coming.